Hey guys, we're taking a look at Mafia II running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5500U. Now this is currently running at 1080p with the lowest possible settings, and the performance is pretty great. We are getting essentially about a 30 FPS average with 1% lows that don't deviate too far from it, and there aren't any moments where the frame times really spike up. There will be on occasion certain situations where maybe looking around will kind of cause the frame times to fluctuate around, but it's usually not during gameplay like this. It at most will be in situations where there is like a cutscene type situation going on. I think the vast majority of people are going to be perfectly fine with the level of performance that you get at 1080p. It is a pretty consistent experience, but again, the frame times will occasionally spike up here and there, and that might be enough to be off-putting to a lot of people. So in those situations, really the only recourse that you have is to just drop down the resolution to 720p or 900p. And personally, I very rarely will play games at 900p because of the fact that a lot of the times you don't get a noticeable enough jump in performance compared to just the visual quality loss, because of the fact that 900p is not compatible with 1080p the same way that 1080p is with 4K, where one 1080p pixel is the equivalent of 4K pixels. 900p does not work the same way because it doesn't actually match up in terms of the number of pixels. So, you know, there will be blurriness that happens at the edges of things because of the fact that the game itself has to try to interpolate what the pixels in between the edges are, which is why a lot of the times when you play things at 720p or 900p on a 1080p display, it's the edges of things that get really fuzzy because now it has to just interpolate information that just isn't there. And 720p works the same way because it actually doesn't match up with 1080p either, but at least with 720p there's a noticeable improvement in FPS that a lot of the times if a game is not running well at 1080p, dropping down to 720p will give you a league's better performance difference, and you're still going to get the blurriness that you would of 900p, but at least you're also getting a noticeable jump in performance instead of just visual degradation with a slight bump in performance. So I'm of the mindset that if I'm going to be taking a visual hit, I might as well get a noticeable performance uplift instead of a relatively small one compared to the visual hit that I'm going to be taking. And you could even see right here, the performance uplift at 720p is noticeable. We are pretty much in a completely different world of gaming experience here, where now we are getting a pretty much consistently smooth, almost 60 FPS experience with 1% lows that fall in line with the level of performance that we're at. 1% lows of 42 are actually pretty great in this situation, and it means we're going to have a very consistently smooth experience. This is pretty much the difference of going from, you know, 1080p 30 FPS to 720p 60. So you have that flexibility of choosing what you want to play this game at. And like I said, if I want to drop the resolution, it's going to be in a scenario where I'm going to net the most increase in performance. If we went down to 900p instead of 720p, we would get worse performance than this, but the visuals would still be degraded. So you might as well just go all the way down to 720p and maximize the performance gain here, because if we were at 900p, what would end up happening? We would have essentially still the lowest possible settings. We would get slightly better FPS than 1080p, and that's about it. It's not going to be a league's different gaming experience. While here at 720p, we are now playing this game as if it was on a completely different system, you know? It's pretty much the equivalent of having one console versus another, where one is capable of doing more. And really, it all comes down to how you want to play this game. You know, personally, I could get away with playing both at 1080p and 720p. If I had to choose between one of the two, I'd probably go 720p just because I don't want to encounter any, you know, potential frame issues at any point throughout the gameplay. But if you care about 1080p, you can just start it up like that and have a good time. But anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. If you found this video useful or entertaining, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.